J.G. Ballard asks, how do you escape the proletariat hordes as they march towards your palatial estate? I discuss this and more on today's episode. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I've found in my travels. Today, it is Short Story Tuesday, so I wanted to talk about a fun short story that I encountered recently. One that is about time and proletariat hordes, as I said it in the intro. I am referring to The Garden of Time by J.G. Ballard, which was published in 1962. I should point out that there is a reason that I'm choosing to talk about The Garden of Time, and that is because this was used as as sort of the costuming prompt for the Met Gala of 2024. Very interesting, even though the Met Gala is kind of what the people in the Garden of Time are mad about. The idea of like a bunch of rich people flaunting their wealth when everyone else is suffering, rather than doing something productive with their wealth. It's an appropriate theme for the Met Gala for the wrong reasons. I don't think they appropriately thought it through, or maybe the person who chose it, probably thought it through and wanted to get people mad at the celebrities. I don't know. It's something to consider there. But for those who don't know about J.G. Ballard, he was a British author, English author, who lived between the 1930s and 2009. He primarily wrote science fiction, adventure stories, pulpy fiction, kind of like that. He wrote a number of novels, short stories, essays, nonfiction, and then he also wrote for TV and film as well. A number of his works were adapted into movies, including Crash, which is about people who have a fetish for car accidents. You might also recall there's another Crash that was written about race and whatnot. It's not a very good movie. That is not the one that Ballard wrote. And he also wrote a book called Empire of the Sun, which was adapted into a movie by Steven Spielberg. So quite a big profile there of his own works. He also wrote a book called The Drowned World, which I recall is sort of about a post-apocalypse that was hurt by global warming. And he wrote this in the 60s, so that's actually really fascinating. I would be interested in exploring more of J.G. Ballard's work, especially since I did enjoy The Garden of Time, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the analysis section. But without further ado, let's talk more about The Garden of Time. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. So, The Garden of Time focuses on Count Axel and his wife, the Countess, who are living at their beautiful villa. It's very nice, very lovely. The wife is playing the harpsichord, lots of music going on, and the Count is taking strolls. It seems like a very peaceful time for them. However, as we see, the Count looks out on the horizon and sees a mass of angry people, kind of frozen but approaching. It's a very large group of people, and they appear to be heading in the direction of the palatial estate. They have carts. They're clearly mad about something. So the Count, or people like the Count, have clearly done these people wrong. And the way that the Count chooses to deal with this is he goes into his garden, picks a flower, and it's revealed that this is a time flower of sort. It has magical properties that allow him to stop time. And he manages to do that, which buys them a couple more days before time starts up again for this setting that they're in, for the world that they're in. Unfortunately, this can't last forever, as the amount of time that it lasts for is slowing down each consecutive day or each consecutive flower that they use. And it appears that the garden is dying, possibly because they're overusing the time, and maybe it's not getting enough sun or something like that. I don't know how time flowers exactly work. But it's also clear that as the time sort of elapses, the mass is getting closer and closer each day, getting more terrifying. And the Countess is seeing it and is very worried, but Axel knows that it portends his doom. And finally, the narrator notes that it is the last evening, and the countess has asked that she get to pick this last flower because they know that it's probably up for them at this point. And after she picks the flower and presumably crushes it so that they can freeze time, it's revealed that the mob breaches the walls and begins destroying the villa, throwing stuff and just destroying this palatial estate. And as they're wandering through the villa, they kind of walk around two very large statues, one of which is holding a flower, indicating that this is how they're represented as frozen in time, or they've been freezing time so much that they've turned into statues. It's a bit unclear, but that's where the story ends there. In terms of analysis, there's a little bit we're talking about with the Garden of Time. One of the themes that Ballard is touching upon here is that of the approaching horror. Ballard sets an uneasy tone by having an angry mob approach little by little. You can see that it spells your doom, and it's getting closer and closer and closer, and you don't seem to be able to do anything about it except for stopping time. But each time you stop it, you lose the ability to one day do that in the future. And so, you got to focus on other things. You don't want to focus on that approaching horror because of what it could possibly do to you. Both Axel and his wife try to ignore the problems, but those problems soon grow to become too obvious. You certainly can't ignore it as the mob crest over the hill, and you see just how many people they are. You're not going to be able to just simply keep freezing time. You're eventually going to have to answer for whatever that mob is angry about. There's a good quote that I would like to read to you from this. He peered only briefly over the wall. They could hear, less than half a mile away, the great dual roar of the ragged army, the ring of iron and lass pressing on towards the house. And there you get the kind of approaching horror that you see in this story. Like he's tried to ignore it, but now there's a dual roar that's getting louder, and you're hearing the stomps, you're hearing everything from those people. You can't simply ignore it anymore, no matter how hard you try, by focusing on the harpsichord that the wife is playing, or just going for strolls and enjoying this timelessness. Eventually, reality catches up with you. And I can see Ballard using this as an extended metaphor for the wealthy ignoring society's problems, choosing not to focus on the people who are asking for things and focusing on your own thing and ignoring all the suffering that's going on. But in doing so, that just makes those people angrier at you because you can fix the problem, but you're just choosing not to do that. And so Ballard really uses that sort of approaching horror to highlight how, this is what happens. You messed around and now you're finding out. Ballard also uses contrast in this story. Ballard compares the blight of the mob, the ugliness of the mob, to the beauty of the flowers, the beauty of the estate. Nothing good can really come from the mob. It looks hideous. It's cresting over the hill. They got carts and torches, and they're all very mad. They are not happy, and so it's a very unsightly kind of appearance. Whereas the flowers are majestic. The flowers can help minimize the mob's effect. They stop time and make you forget about what's going on. And then you add all of that to the harpsichord and the other distractions that are taking place. It's very beautiful, and it helps you forget that your doom is imminent. But again, this is the problem that I was getting at earlier with the ignoring of society's problems. You're focusing on these weird side things that don't really matter. Like harpsichord music is beautiful, but you should really be addressing the approaching blight of the mob that you're trying to forget about. And something tells me that Axel and his family ignored all of these other society problems, and that's why the ugly exist. You focus too much on the beautiful and not enough on the ugly, and so the ugly got bigger and bigger until it became this giant mass of people coming for you and demanding your head, most likely. I'd also like to note that this story is very similar to The Masque of the Red Death by Edgar Allan Poe. I can't seem to stop talking about Poe. But with The Masque of the Red Death, it focuses on a group of wealthy people who hide away from a plague, only for that plague to enter within the walls and kill everyone who was hiding away in this palatial estate. Whereas here, these people are trying to hide away from the world for whatever wrong actions they may have done. History certainly shows that the proletariat often rise up to give the bourgeoisie what they rightfully deserve. They're trying to hide away from the world using this time, but ultimately the masses break through the wall and bring reality to the very wealthy people and what they wished to avoid the whole time. However, this story does feel a little bit more vague. You don't quite know why the masses are approaching this house, this estate, this villa. You can kind of guess why, but I do think that's one of the problems is this story can be a little vague. It could be fleshed out a little bit. How did the Axels come across this time garden? Are the people mad because of the time garden or because of some other weird thing that the Axels have chosen to do? That there's a lot of questions there, and I get that it's not really the point. It's more about stopping time and the masses breaking through. That's important more than anything else. But I do think that Ballard could have really added to the story and improved it and made it more memorable in that way. Anyway, those are my thoughts on The Garden of Time by J.G. Ballard. A pretty high quality, interesting short story. Maybe not one of the best, but far from one of the worst. And I do recommend it, so I'm going to put a link to it in the description. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, or let's just have a conversation and talk about what this story could mean and if maybe I missed anything. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this author or this short story if they don't already know. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and time-stopping travels. Farewell.